Sophie, a 17-year-old high school student, had just moved to a new town with her family. She was nervous about starting at a new school, especially since she had left behind her friends in the old town. On her first day at the new school, Sophie was immediately drawn to a mysterious and handsome boy named Max. Max was brooding and quiet, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. As Sophie tried to navigate her new school and make friends, she found herself constantly running into Max. They would exchange brief, intense conversations. But Max would always seem to pull away, leaving Sophie wondering if she had imagined the connection between them. One day, Sophie stumbled upon Max playing guitar in the school's music room. The music was hauntingly beautiful, and Sophie felt like she had discovered a secret part of Max's soul. As Sophie stood there, mesmerized by Max's music, she felt a sense of longing wash over her. She wanted to be closer to him, to understand what drove him to create such beautiful sounds. Max, lost in his own world, didn't seem to notice Sophie's presence. His fingers moved deftly over the strings, coaxing out a melody that spoke directly to Sophie's heart. As the last notes faded away, Max slowly opened his eyes, and his gaze met Sophie's. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the air thick with tension. Then Max's eyes dropped, and he quickly gathered his things, as if trying to escape the moment. Sophie felt a pang of disappointment, thinking she'd missed her chance to connect with him. But as Max turned to leave, he paused, his eyes locking onto Sophie's once more. "Thanks for listening," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophie's heart skipped a beat. "You're incredibly talented," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper too. Max's gaze lingered on hers for a moment before he nodded and walked away, leaving Sophie wondering if she'd just imagined the spark between them. Sophie decided to take matters into her own hands and gather more information about Max. She started by asking around school, trying to gather tidbits from his classmates. One of his classmates mentioned that Max was a bit of a loner, but had a passion for music and writing. Another mentioned that he had recently moved to the town, just like Sophie. Determined to learn more, Sophie decided to visit the local coffee shop, where she had heard Max worked part-time. As she entered the cozy shop, she spotted Max behind the counter, his eyes fixed on a book. Sophie took a seat, trying to appear nonchalant. Max looked up, caught her gaze, and smiled briefly before returning to his book. As she waited for her drink, Sophie mustered up the courage to strike up a conversation. "Hey, Max, what's the book about?" she asked, nodding towards the novel in his hands. Max looked up, slightly startled, and then smiled wryly. "Just trying to escape reality, I guess. It's a novel about a guy who's trying to find his place in the world." Sophie's heart skipped a beat as their eyes met. "Know the feeling," she said softly. Max's gaze lingered on hers, and for a moment, Sophie felt like they were connecting on a deeper level. The waitress's interruption broke the spell, and Max quickly looked away, focusing on steaming milk for another customer's drink. Sophie felt a pang of disappointment. As she took her coffee and prepared to leave, Sophie couldn't resist saying, "Hey, Max, maybe I'll see you around." Max looked up, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. "Yeah, maybe," he replied, his tone neutral, but his gaze lingering a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Sophie left the coffee shop, feeling both exhilarated and frustrated. She couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something more to Max, something he wasn't revealing. As she walked down the street, lost in thought, Sophie stumbled upon a flyer advertising an open mic night at the local music venue. And there, in the list of performers, she saw Max's name. Sophie arrived at the venue, her heart racing with anticipation. She took a seat in the back, trying to blend in and observe without being noticed. As the performances began, Sophie found herself enjoying the music, but her eyes kept drifting to the side of the stage, waiting for Max to appear. Finally, the MC announced Max's name, and he stepped into the spotlight. Sophie's breath caught as he began to play his guitar and sing. His music was hauntingly beautiful, and his voice spoke directly to her soul. As Max performed, Sophie felt like she was seeing a different side of him. He was passionate, vulnerable, and captivating. She couldn't help but be drawn in, her emotions raw and exposed. When Max finished his set, the audience erupted into applause. Sophie joined in, her hands clapping wildly as she felt a sense of pride and admiration for this mysterious boy who had captured her attention. As Max left the stage, his eyes scanned the crowd, and for a moment, they locked onto Sophie's. He smiled, and she felt her heart skip a beat. This time, it wasn't just a brief connection. It was like they shared a secret, a moment that only they understood. Sophie's eyes remained locked on Max's, her mind racing with uncertainty. She felt like she was drowning in the depths of his gaze, unable to look away. Max, too, seemed frozen in place, his eyes burning with an intensity that made Sophie's heart race. The applause and chatter of the crowd faded into the background as they stood there, suspended in time. Finally, Max broke the spell, his lips curling into a gentle smile. He nodded slightly, as if acknowledging a secret shared between them, and then turned to disappear into the crowd. Sophie exhaled slowly, feeling like she'd been holding her breath for an eternity. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something had shifted between them, something subtle yet profound. As she sat there trying to process her emotions, Sophie felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see a girl with a warm smile and a friendly gaze. "Hey, you're the girl who's been staring at Max all night, right?" The girl asked, her voice conspiratorial. "I'm Lily, Max's friend. I think you two might have a connection." Sophie's face lit up with a bright smile. As she shook Lily's hand, "I'm Sophie." "Nice to meet you, Lily. Yeah, I've just met Max a few times, but there's something about him that's really drawn me in." Lily's eyes sparkled with knowing. "I totally get it. Max has this way of captivating people. He's an amazing guy, but also pretty mysterious. I've known him for years, and I'm still learning new things about him." Sophie leaned in, eager for more insight. "What's he like, really?" "I feel like there's so much more to him than what he shows on the surface." Lily nodded, glancing around the room. To ensure they were out of earshot, Max has been through some tough stuff in his past. He's built walls around himself, but once you get to know him, he's fiercely loyal and protective. And his music, it's like he's pouring his soul out. Sophie's heart went out to Max, and she felt a deeper connection to him. "I can see that," she said softly. "His music is hauntingly beautiful." Lily smiled. "I'm glad you understand. Maybe I can help you get to know him better, if you're interested." Sophie's face lit up with excitement as she nodded enthusiastically. "That would be amazing, Lily. I would love to get to know Max better. Thank you so much for offering to help." Lily grinned mischievously. "I'll make sure to give you the inside scoop. But first, let's get out of here and grab some coffee. I'll tell you all about Max's quirks and secrets." As they left the venue and walked to a nearby cafe, Lily regaled Sophie with stories of Max's childhood, his passions, and his fears. Sophie listened with rapt attention, feeling like she was unraveling the mystery of Max's enigmatic personality. Over coffee, Lily revealed that Max was not only a talented musician, but also a poet and a writer. "He's been working on a novel for years," Lily said, "but he's too afraid to share it with anyone." Sophie's heart went out to Max. She couldn't believe that this talented and creative person was hiding his work from the world. "I wish he would share it with me," Sophie said wistfully. Lily smiled knowingly. "I think he might just do that, Sophie. He seems to trust you, and that's a big deal for Max." As they finished their coffee, Lily glanced at her watch. "Hey, I have an idea." Max is playing a private gig tonight, just for a few close friends. Want to come with me?" Sophie glanced at her phone and sighed, feeling a pang of disappointment. "I'd love to go, Lily, but it's getting really late, and I promised my parents I'd be home by a certain time. I don't want to worry them." Lily nodded understandingly. "No worries, Sophie. I totally get it. Family comes first. But I'll make sure to keep you posted on Max's upcoming gigs and events. Deal?" Sophie smiled, feeling grateful for Lily's kindness. "Deal. Thank you so much for understanding and for being so welcoming. I feel like I've known you forever." Lily laughed. "That's what friends are for. And who knows, maybe next time you can meet us at Max's gig and we can all hang out together." As they hugged goodbye, Sophie felt a sense of belonging she hadn't expected. She realized that getting to know Max was not just about him, but also about the people who cared about him. As she walked home, Sophie's mind wandered back to Max. She wondered what his private gig would be like and whether he would ever share his writing with her. Just as she turned the corner onto her street, Sophie's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Max. Lily told me you had to leave early. Sorry I didn't get to say goodbye." Sophie's heart skipped a beat. Max was texting her. She couldn't wait to respond. Sophie smiled to herself as she typed out a response, trying to sound casual. "Hey Max, no worries at all. I had a great time tonight. Thanks for playing. Lily's been filling me in on all the fun I missed." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "Maybe I'll catch you at the next gig?" Sophie hit send and waited for a response, trying to appear nonchalant despite her growing excitement. Max's response came quickly. "Definitely, Sophie. I'd like that. And maybe next time we can grab coffee and talk about something other than music." Sophie's heart skipped a beat at the suggestion. Was Max asking her out? She tried to play it cool, typing out a response. "Sounds like a plan, Max. I'll hold you to it." As she hit send, Sophie couldn't help but wonder what this newfound connection with Max might lead to. As the days went by, Sophie and Max's friendship continued to grow. They would meet up for coffee, go for walks, and talk about everything from music to books to their dreams and aspirations. Sophie found herself falling for Max's charming and introspective nature, and she could sense that he felt the same way about her. But neither of them wanted to risk ruining their friendship by confessing their feelings. One evening, as they sat together on a bench watching the sunset, Max turned to Sophie and said, "I'm really glad we met, Sophie. You're one of the most genuine and caring people I've ever known." Sophie's heart skipped a beat as she looked into Max's eyes. "I feel the same way about you, Max. You're an incredible person, and I love being around you." The air was charged with tension as they sat there, the only sound being the crickets chirping in the distance. Then, without thinking, Max reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair out of Sophie's face. Sophie's heart fluttered as she felt a spark of electricity at his touch. She knew in that moment that their friendship had blossomed into something more. As Max's hand brushed against Sophie's face, they both froze, the tension between them palpable. But instead of leaning in for a kiss, Max smiled softly and pulled his hand back, his eyes never leaving Sophie's. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to overstep." Sophie's heart still racing, she shook her head. "You didn't," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I liked it." Max's smile grew wider, but he still kept his distance. "I'm glad," he said, "but I don't want to rush anything. I want to get to know you better, Sophie, really know you." Sophie's heart swelled with emotion. No one had ever wanted to take things slow with her before. No one had ever cared enough to really get to know her. "Okay," she said, smiling back at Max. "I'd like that." And so they continued to spend time together, exploring the town, talking about their hopes and dreams, and learning each other's quirks and habits. They took long walks, had deep conversations, and laughed together until their sides hurt. As the days turned into weeks, Sophie realized that she had never felt this way about anyone before. She was falling deeply in love with Max, but she was also scared. Scared of getting hurt, scared of losing him. One crisp autumn evening, Max and Sophie found themselves at the same bench where they had shared their first spark. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars twinkle to life above. Max turned to Sophie, his eyes shining with emotion. "Sophie, from the moment I met you, I knew you were different. Your kindness, your smile, your infectious laugh, it all captivated me." Sophie's heart skipped a beat as Max took her hand, his touch sending shivers down her spine. "I love how we can talk about anything and everything," Max continued. "I love how we balance each other out, and I love how I feel when I'm with you, like I'm home." Sophie's eyes welled up, with tears as Max's words poured out from his heart. "Sophie, I think I might be falling in love with you," Max said, his voice trembling. "I know it's fast, but I can't help how I feel. I want to explore this with you, to see where it takes us." Tears of joy streaming down her face, Sophie nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm already there, Max. I love you too." As the stars shone down on them, Max leaned in, his lips brushing against Sophie's in a soft, gentle kiss. The world around them melted away, leaving only the two of them, lost in the magic of their first kiss. As the days went by, Sophie and Max's relationship blossomed. They spent every spare moment together, exploring the town, trying new restaurants, and laughing until their sides hurt. But as their love grew stronger, new challenges arose. Max's past, which he had kept hidden for so long, began to surface. His fears and insecurities, stemming from a difficult childhood, threatened to tear them apart. Sophie, sensing Max's turmoil, tried to be patient and understanding, but as the darkness of his past closed in around him, she felt helpless, unsure of how to reach the man she loved. One night, as they sat on the beach, watching the stars, Max's emotions boiled over. "I don't deserve you, Sophie," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm broken, and I don't know how to fix myself." Sophie took his hand, her heart aching with compassion. "You're not broken, Max. You're strong and capable and loved. We'll face this together, okay?" But as they hugged, Sophie knew that their love would be tested. Could they overcome the demons of Max's past, or would they tear them apart? Sophie's unwavering support and love helped Max begin to confront his demons. She encouraged him to seek therapy, and he slowly started to open up about his past. With Sophie by his side, Max began to heal. He learned to recognize his triggers and develop coping mechanisms to deal with his anxiety and depression. As Max worked through his issues, their relationship grew stronger. They continued to explore the town, but now they also explored the depths of their own hearts. One evening, as they sat on the beach, Max turned to Sophie with tears in his eyes. "I don't know where I'd be without you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You've helped me find myself, to love myself. I'm forever grateful." Sophie's heart swelled with love and pride. "You're the one who's done all the work, Max. I'm just honored to be by your side." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Max took Sophie's hand and led her to a quiet spot. He pulled out a small box, opened it, and revealed a beautiful silver necklace with a tiny guitar pendant. "I want you to have this," Max said, his voice trembling. "You're the melody that fills my heart, the rhythm that makes me whole." Tears of joy streaming down her face, Sophie nodded, and Max fastened the necklace around her neck. Max planned a special evening to confess his forever love to Sophie. He booked a private room at a fancy restaurant overlooking the ocean. The room was filled with candles, flowers, and a live string quartet playing their favorite love songs. As they sat down for dinner, Sophie noticed the extra effort Max had put into making this evening special. She felt her heart flutter with excitement, sensing that something big was about to happen. After dinner, Max took Sophie's hand and led her to the balcony, where a stunning view of the ocean awaited. The quartet played a soft, romantic melody as Max turned to Sophie, his eyes shining with love. "Sophie, from the moment I met you, I knew you were the one," Max said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You light up my world. You make my heart sing. I want to spend forever with you." As the music swelled, Max dropped to one knee, pulled out a small box, and opened it, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. "Sophie, will you marry me?" Max asked, his voice filled with hope and love. Tears of joy streaming down her face, Sophie nodded eagerly, and Max slid the ring onto her finger. As the ring sparkled on Sophie's finger, Max stood up and pulled her into a tender, romantic kiss. The string quartet played a soft, sweet melody, and the ocean waves gently lapped against the shore below. Their lips touched, and Sophie felt like she was melting into Max's arms. The world around them faded away, leaving only the two of them, lost in their love. Sophie smiled up at Max, her eyes shining with happiness. "Yes, yes, a million times yes," she exclaimed. Max grinned, relief and joy washing over him. "I promise to love you forever," he whispered. They danced and enjoyed their moment together. As they danced, they planned their wedding and excitement grew. They couldn't wait to start their new life together. The day Sophie had waited was finally here, and she can have her dream wedding. Time has passed quickly and she couldn't believe it. As she stood outside the church premises, memories of her and Max came flooding in her mind, from the first day she set his eyes on him, through to the obstacles that they both faced, but amidst all, love conquered. Max stared at Sophie as tears built in his eyes. He can now call her his wife. After they finished taking their vow, they shared a passionate kiss to seal their vow and headed to the wedding reception. The reception was filled with their families and friends, and they all laughed and danced. Sophie and Max shared their first dance as husband and wife, swaying to the music, lost in each other's eyes. As the night ended, they slipped outside, hand in hand, and gazed out the calm, moonlit ocean. "Forever and always," Max whispered, pulling Sophie close. And so they lived happily ever after.